Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Wednesday. It is April the 16th, and I appreciate you joining me here. For those of you who are joining us on Rumble, you're a little bit late. I know that, or I'm a little bit late. I know those of you over on YouTube and on X that are watching us stream that do the live show. Yeah, we're a couple seconds behind, and I promise you it's because I wanted to put something pretty good in. I think some of the winds are changing. I'm watching Democrats right now lean into that 20% instead of the 80%. Where most Americans are. Maybe it's even more than that. It might even be a bigger imbalance. What percentage of people want to defend criminals, want to defend illegal aliens that come here and do all kinds of dastardly deeds in the United States? I can't imagine it's that big a group. I think it's a vocal group. I think that they are loud, but I don't think they're representative. So today we're going to do a profile. It's just a snapshot. It's just a thing that touched me, a moment where I saw a Democrat senator from Maryland virtue signal, show what he's going to do. He's leaving the country as of yesterday to go and look for a man who was deported, an allegedly MS-13 gang member, deported by the Trump administration, sent to the Supermax prison in El Salvador. Continues to make big news because that's what they're going to major in. They're going to major in the absolute most minor of things. And on that exact same day, yesterday, we had an El Salvadorian man convicted of brutally murdering one of that senator's constituents. And if that's not the snapshot that tells you exactly where the Democrat Party sits right now and how insane that must be, how crazy it is. The fact that they now have Joe Biden parading out there and speaking just like old Joe Biden did, talking about how he didn't know any black kids and how weird that was. Like all the weird stuff. They're re-adjudicating like the election from 2020 at this point. And they're doubling down on why we think that they lost and why we had January 6th and why we saw weaponized government when Biden got in. I mean, all of this stuff just seems absolutely absurd. I cannot believe we are living in this theater of the absurd at this point, and there's no other way to describe it, I don't think. So that's what we're going to get into today. That's the intro for you. That's what it's going to look like. Before we get started, I guess we should probably say thanks to the folks that keep us on the air. In this case, it's going to be Blackout Coffee. I definitely needed it today because, shoot, we got babies that are potty training, and they're waking my wife up, and they're waking the house up. So, we've been telling you about the Blackout Coffee, folks. We've been doing it for a couple of months now. Blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. That's the website to go to. Make sure you get that promo code in before you go out. You'll get 20% off your first order when you use the promo code KYLE. We've been telling you about them. We're going to kind of break it down a little bit here. So it's not just another coffee company. These are people that are hardworking Americans. They're built on American grit and values, kind of the things that are the opposite of sneaking in front of the line and coming in here illegally. 6 years ago, those founders started this business in their home garage. Today, they're working out of a 64,000 square foot warehouse, and they're roasting all their beans and they're packing them all themselves. They've got 30 employees that are all Americans working with no corporate nonsense, just a coffee company that cares about the American dream. I just ordered up 10 pounds of it. Yeah, you guys kind of know how that works out. I do not like to be without coffee. So I ordered it over the weekend. I got my shipping notice on Monday, and it sounds like it went out. They create the notice one day, and it went out yesterday. So inbound 10 pounders for the Seraphin household. Blackout Coffee is not just about making a great cup of coffee. They're about supporting the American dream. They built it that way. They are doing the same thing for you guys. There's no shortcuts. There's no woke garbage, no weak beans, just a kick in the beans. If you believe in hard work and American values, coffee that gets you moving, it's time to make that switch over. Blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Again, blackoutcoffee.com/KYLE. Save 20% on your first order. Keep that American dream alive. Don't drink weak coffee. Get your day started out the right way. Let's get this going. All right, so we're gonna start where I guess I went to CNN today. I don't always start with CNN, but that's kind of where I started. So this is the story. This is the man. This is the Abrego Garcia case. This is a headline for CNN. They want to make sure this stays front and center. And there's a federal judge who's overseeing the case. And she said, so the Supreme Court ruled on this, said that the Trump administration must facilitate bringing him back, whatever the heck that means. Doesn't demand that they do, because obviously now outside of U.S. control, we have a lot of influence on El Salvador, but there's no requirement for the judiciary to tell the executive on what they can and can't do when it comes to foreign policy. So this is the so-called Maryland man, right? Maryland man, also known as an El Salvadorian citizen living in the United States, alleged to be an MS-13 by both the El Salvadorian government and the United States government. And now the judge, Paula Zinnis, said that I do need evidence in this regard because to date, what the record shows. By the way, those are all words that don't even mean anything. I was reading that sentence and I was looking over it and I'm like, I guess I'll read it. I guess I'll read her words that's quoted. It's so bad. It's so badly written. It's so badly stated. There's nothing that's been done. She said she is not satisfied with the sworn statements she's getting from the Trump administration detailing how the government is carrying out her directive. Her directive is she's telling the executive that they, in fact, must bring this man home when he is no longer in U.S. control. Of course, they also sort of realized that the Alien Enemies Act is non-justiciable, which was something that Stephen Miller brought up. And so Miller made some arguments in the White House the other day. I'm actually going to go back and play that press conference again, where the press, including CNN, and this is relevant later because CNN apparently needed to reassure Americans that they do not hate America. There's ample evidence that's not accurate. But the CNN question, which went to the president of El Salvador, was kind of saying like, hey, can you confirm that you're going to bring this guy back? And he's like, I don't want to bring him back. I'm not going to smuggle him to the United States. And then where is he going to live? Like he's going to go back to his home in Maryland and then we're just going to deport him again? I don't understand why they've decided to just hone in on this. And I'm going to show you that this is just a kind of an ugly pattern. Are all people who come here illegally dangerous criminals? No. Do a chunk of them end up being dangerous and doing horrible things in this country? Absolutely. Now, the argument that I've seen from some of the pro-immigration, illegal immigration people, the people that want to call them undocumented migrants and all this other nonsense, they all seem to be like really, really honed in on the fact that illegal aliens commit less crimes than native-born Americans. All those crimes are not supposed to be here, though. And they all started a crime by coming into this country, even if it's a civil penalty. I was listening to a space last night with a former Border Patrol agent guy that I know, that I've kind of talked to for the last couple of years. And one of the things he said is the reason why they are civil penalties and not criminal penalties is because a criminal penalty would trigger the amount of money that the United States government has to spend on giving them representation. In other words, the reason it's a civil penalty is because the federal government and Congress, by that extension, did not want to fund legal aid and give all of these people access to the public defenders that the United States government pays for people who do criminal offenses. Does that make sense? They don't want to write that check. I can actually understand that. That's not a bad reason to keep it civil if it keeps a little bit less of the sort of nonsense from flooding into our system. We already have enough people that are being accused and need to use the federal public defender's office. I have a weird story about working with them at one point in time. We actually had one of the rare cases and this is why I know that what I was doing when I was working in the Bureau was actually pretty fair. I actually had a federal public defender's office who think of the FBI as being their nemesis. I had one of them actually reach out and ask me to take a case because they got a recorded phone call of a Hispanic guy out in Las Cruces who was threatening federal judges. And they were like, we can't defend somebody who's actually committing crimes on our recorded line. Kind of interesting. And I went in there and their investigator was like, hey, you guys are being really fair. It's like, yeah, I don't have any axe to grind. If someone committed a crime, we'll go out there and prosecute it. We'll go out there and investigate it and give it to the AUSAs, and the AUSAs will move it forward. And if not, I don't care. I don't get any extra points for filing a case on somebody or investigating and finding somebody, with a bunch of exculpatory evidence and hiding it. That's absurd. Which is why the January 6th stuff was always problematic for me. In any case, this is the White House discussion. We played it yesterday. I'm going to play it again only because it brings up CNN, and that's going to set up a clip for later.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right? How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States. I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
But you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing. I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah,
they're sick. These are sick people.
Aren't they sick, though? Isn't that kind of sick? Why are they arguing for this guy when there's other things that could be going on right now? So let me see if we can find a little clip here of CNN definitely not hating the United States. Maybe we'll start with the examples of the fact that they kind of do hate the United States. And here's a little super clip put together by Tom Elliott and the Grabian guys. Is it Grabian? Newsbusters? I'm not sure. I think this is Newsbuster, actually. I'm looking at it. Just listen to some of these little hot takes coming out from CNN. Look, you're not going to be the person who is necessarily responsible for all the guests' comments that come on your network. But if you have a pattern of people that all kind of say the same thing, and some of your anchors also mirror it, aren't you really kind of telling us what your editorial perspective is? This is CNN.
Here's a breaking news. We live in a racist, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, anti-Semitic country.
Everything they're doing runs against making America great. Well, it was never great, so I'm not going to say the again part, but making America great.
Kicking off the Independence Day weekend, President Trump will be at Mount Rushmore, where he'll be standing in front of a monument of two slave owners and on land wrestled away from Native Americans, told that be focusing on the effort to, quote, tear down our country's history.
They strongly believe, these human smugglers, that this is their chance to enter the United States. This is their chance at the American dream. That's why they risk everything, only to find out that it's all a lie.
And when we got our freedom, our quote-unquote freedom, we were never restored whole, which is why you hear about reparations. So until the United States atones for that and makes good on that, we're still living in a racist country.
Oh, is that so? I guess that's why you had to have Dana Bash go out there and run some cover for this. They realized that they still live in a racist country. It's racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, blah, 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 blah. All this other nonsense. And so then you got them trying to cover. Dana Bash has been there 32 years. I think that just makes you complicit. And we're going to have a couple of pretty illustrative stories coming from CNN's website. It's not just their TV host, but here she is trying to explain, it's absurd that you would say we hate America despite all of our coverage.
Definitely focus on a lot of some misinformation as well. But we want to digest all of this right now with our terrific panel here and our reporters. Jeff Zeleny, I want to start with you. You are at the White House. Before I get to you, I just want to say, for the record, since we heard President Trump say in the Oval Office that CNN hates our country, CNN does not hate our country. That should go without saying. I've been here for 32 years, and I see a rhetorical device in him trying to say such a thing. That said, I want to focus on the news that we heard. And the news came out in...
Yeah, they want to focus on the news. A rhetorical device would be the way that something is said, not necessarily exactly the material that was said. How about this story? This is not a news story. This comes from June of 2024. This is from NBC, one of their friends on the same side of the aisle. Death of a 12-year-old girl in Texas fuels the Trump-Biden debate on immigration. Oh, is that what it is? It's just the death of a 12-year-old girl that's fueling the debate? This 12-year-old girl, she obviously, died in an attempted border crossing? Is that what happened? Is that this? No, that's not the story. The story is the White House and the Biden campaign responded Friday to the death. It's the death of, not the murder of. It's the death of a 12-year-old girl in Houston. That's a rhetorical device, folks, if you're wondering how that works. After two suspects were charged with capital murder, they were found to be undocumented migrants. If you want to know more about undocumented migrants, you can click here. Do you want to know more? Do you see how when they say it, they tell you what they think? Jocelyn Nagare was discovered Monday in a shallow creek after being strangled to death. They said we can't comment on law enforcement. The White House said their hearts go out. No thoughts, not even any thoughts and prayers. Just their hearts are going out. Well, that's good. The two men who were arrested and charged with their murder were a 22-year-old, 26-year-old man. They both had immigration violation holds from ICE on their court records. They both crossed illegally into the United States at the Texas border. And they both skipped out on the appearances after they were apprehended. No clear way to understand how they made their way to Houston, but they did. And of course, the Trump campaign seized on it. A lot of people voted because they saw these stories. This is not a unique story. It's a very simple search if you want to go out there. On a left-leaning search engine, you can simply go over to our friends like, who's this? This is just a local news source. This is the Maine Wire. This is one of the least populated states in America, Maine. One that we often forget about. His actions shattered a family, illegal alien who drove under the influence, killed 2 Connecticut children, arrested by ICE. That happened in May of 2024. This is all during that campaign. ICE announced on Monday, that was obviously going back like almost a year and a half now, that a Mexican national was convicted in Connecticut, driving under the influence, killing 2 children. So main story, Connecticut kids, deportation officers from ERO, the Enforcement Removal Operations, out of Boston, grabbed a 40-year-old illegal alien during a traffic stop in Connecticut. He was convicted of driving under the influence and killing 2 Connecticut children. His actions shattered a family. We can't allow unlawfully present convicted felons to victimize the residents of our communities. He was apprehended, and they're focused on removing egregious offenders. Oh. So DUI, that's a reckless disregard. Whenever I hear someone talk about an illegal alien killing a family, destroying a group of people, especially through DUI, which is just a reckless crime, I can't help but remember something that connected to me. This is a story from WTOP out of Washington, D.C. It's a Montgomery County, Maryland story. Family of fallen FBI agent remembers the great guy and a man of faith. That man was Carlos Wolf. Carlos Wolf, an immigrant to the United States himself, former FBI agent, a supervisory special agent out of the Washington field office where I used to work. And in my first year working there, in December, so coming up on the 1-year anniversary of actually being assigned to the field office, almost to the day, by the way. This story is dated December the 11th. My first day was December the 12th of 2016. I remember on my 1-year anniversary of being there, we found out that Carlos Wolf, who by all accounts was a great guy, friends of mine, he was helping somebody change a tire on a dark roadway in Maryland along Interstate 270. And he got smoked by an illegal alien driving under the influence. Not the first time that guy did it. That guy wasn't charged with murder, by the way. There's his family on the screen. You see that? There's his wife. There's his 2 children. They're at the beach. They went to parks. Just a regular guy. Came to the U.S. in the 80s. He was 36 years old. How awful is that? People didn't know what he did because he was humble about it. By all accounts, he was the exact person that you thought was working at the FBI. Just a decent Christian man. People thought he drove a bus for church, is what they said in the article. Family members didn't even know what he did because he didn't talk about it. He downplayed all of his work. Worked in the Criminal Investigation Division. And he was killed along with a battalion fire chief, a volunteer fire chief named Sandra Cohen. They both stood there working on a vehicle. And they got hit by some dude. Crossed the lines. So I guess the thing that is most upsetting to me about all this CNN nonsense is that we've got these people that have come into this country. They have no business being here. They might be a smaller percentage of the crime statistics, but they're a percentage that could be easily stopped because they have no right to be here in the first place. And this is why I found this to be most upsetting today. This is a guy named Chris Van Hollen. He's a senator, and he's out of Maryland, the same place where Chris Wolf was killed. And this is the story. The story is he's going to go and he's going to do the work the Biden administration was starting, and the Democrat Party continues. Democratic senator heads to El Salvador to try to visit Kilmar Abrego Garcia, They warned of a constitutional crisis. And he said he hopes to report back to the family in Maryland on the Maryland man's condition. Again, Maryland man. CNN doesn't like rhetorical devices about where they hate America. And yet, it's the Democrat Party that they support that continues to use rhetorical devices to talk about a quote-unquote Maryland man. When he's not a Maryland man, is he? He's not even in Maryland anymore. He's not a citizen of the United States. He's not a resident of Maryland. He is now the resident of a supermax prison in El Salvador. That's a thing. I've got, I think this is his wife. I mixed my clips up in here, so bear with me, folks. I'm pretty confident this is his wife talking about how he was, quote unquote, abducted by ICE. Abducted as in he was legally removed from a country that he's illegally in. But yeah, let's just see what that looks like. They did a press conference and a big show of it yesterday. I'm going to tell you why I'm particularly incensed in a moment, because there was another story that could have gotten attention, and they chose this one instead.
My name is Jennifer. On March 12th, my husband, Kilmer, was abducted and disappeared by the Trump administration. It's been 28 days since I lost on my husband. Since his children hugged him, since his mother kissed him, since his brother has talked to him. Court ruled that indeed this should have never happened. The rule that my life partner, Kilmer, should have returned home 50 hours ago. But here I am again today, standing before you, pleading that you continue to uplift his story and remember his name, because the Trump administration and the Bukele administration continues to delay the reunification of my family. This so-called administration error has destroyed my family's happiness, my children's innocence.
What?
Kilmer, if you can hear me.
He can't. He's in jail. So here's the thing. Why are you not down in El Salvador, where your husband is, if that's what you want to do? That's an option. She said that the Trump administration was told they had to return. That's not exactly what was said. Even CNN, who does kind of hate America, they can't just sit on that and make up lies. They brought on their legal analyst, Paula Reed. She is their chief legal affairs correspondent. She had a hard time actually agreeing with the narrative that was trying to be pushed by someone like a Jake Tapper. Here she is talking about it was a mushy ruling, and so they're just operating in the mush. That makes sense to me.
And President Trump and President Bukele made it clear that Abrego Garcia will not be returned to the United States, despite this U.S. Supreme Court ruling saying that Trump had to facilitate his return. So are they just ignoring a U.S. Supreme Court ruling, or is the fact that the ruling was so mushy, in your words, giving him an opening?
It's a technical term I learned in law school, Jake. Mushy, look, they're working within the ambiguity that the Supreme Court justices gave them. They did not order the administration to return him to the United States. They said that they need to facilitate this return. They could have said, we order him returned, but they didn't do that. So you heard the Attorney General. She was being very careful in the Oval Office when she was asked, would you help? She says, of course we'd provide a plane, right? Thereby facilitating whatever El Salvador is doing. The Supreme Court appeared to defer to the executive branch, given that this is an international matter. And you see, yes, it does look a little bit like a semantic game, but they are playing within the bounds of what the Supreme Court ruled. So no, they are not defying this order.
And take a listen to how White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller views it.
And a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador.
Stephen, you got the win. I don't know why he had to go so far, because what he's saying is not completely accurate. No, I talked to the kidnapping. All right. So the district court said that the administration needed to facilitate and effectuate the return of this man to the United States and gave a date. The Supreme Court says, yes, you need to facilitate this. But when it comes to effectuating, making it happen, they said this needs to go back down to the lower court. They need to clarify what that meant. And they warned the lower court, you need to be deferential to the executive branch because we're talking about foreign affairs. And they gave no deadline. So again,
real simple stuff. You don't have the ability to compel the administration to do things outside of the purview of your court. Yeah, is Stephen Miller probably overstating their case? That's his job. His job is to message strong. And so he did. He's not giving a legal opinion. He's not writing this up in a brief and submitting it to a court. He's letting them know that we're not going to play your stupid game because people have been kowtowing to your nonsense for far too long. And I'm going to show you an example of how the left has decided to do their version of that, which is actually infinitely stupider, especially on the day that it was chosen. And we're going to just hone in on one of the two senators, the Democratic senators from Maryland, who theoretically represents this Maryland man, a non-U.S. citizen who can't vote. Before we do, I'm going to say thanks to my buddies over at Patriot Coolers, patriotcoolers.com. The promo code is KYLE. There is one sitting on my desk. Almost at all times, you will find one here. This is the 20-ounce coffee mug. This thing fits in all of your cup holders for your vehicles. It rolls with me whenever I go out of town. It rolls with me whenever I jump into my Ford truck. Yeah, it's a Ford truck. For those of you who don't, somebody was like, I see Kyle as a GMC guy, not a Ford guy. It is what it is. I started my relationship with my wife in a Ford truck. I had to buy a Ford truck to be able to drive and see her, of all things. So it was an old Ford truck. Back on point, we keep a Patriot cooler both as a drinking vessel, but we also keep their 50-quart cooler in the background. It's great for going outdoors. It's great for when you have people over. It's really great for keeping your groceries cool if you're going to be driving in a place that is as hot as it is in Texas, America. If you live in a place that has a real summer and doesn't really have a real winter, you might want to keep your frozen goods frozen as you take them home. You can consider that as well. It gives you a better reason to have something like that. PatriotCoolers.com. Again, PatriotCoolers.com is the longest serving sponsor that we have. I keep one up on the wall. That is the Suspendables collection. If you guys want to find that, you can do so, and you can get it etched and engraved with Garrett O'Boyle's designs. They're great people. You will not be upset about having them. Nobody has gotten one and been like, I got screwed. Good company, good people, great product. They back them up. We appreciate them being part of this. Let's keep going forward. Let me tell you why I'm so pissed about this guy. This senator decided to film this sort of performative nonsense, a little TikTok style video, standing at the airport, declaring what he's going to be doing. And we're going to contrast it with the thing that he should have been handling and talking about if he wanted to go and get in line with what normal Americans care about. Watch this.
I'm here at the airport. I'm about to board my flight for San Salvador. The goal of this mission is to let the Trump administration, to let the government of El Salvador know that we are going to keep fighting to bring Abrego Garcia home until he returns to his family. I hope to meet with representatives of the government. I hope to have the chance to actually see Kilmar and see what his condition is. But we are going to keep fighting because this is a miscarriage of justice. The Supreme Court has ruled 9-0, that he was illegally taken out of the country and put in a prison in El Salvador. And this is about due process. This is about rule of law. What bullies do is they begin by picking on the most vulnerable. But if we get rid of the rule of law, due process in the United States, it's a short road from there to tyranny.
Got it. Okay. This is a Maryland man. The guy that you're going after, not a Maryland man. Chris Wolf, fallen FBI agent, Maryland man, family man, in the United States, legal immigrant from Venezuela. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, not so much. Pretty shocking. Because yesterday, when he was filming that video at the airport, doing a stand-up TikTok and talking about how he was going to go out there and make sure that this guy's okay, this also happened. Victor Martinez Hernandez was found guilty of the 2023 murder of a Maryland mother who was out hiking named Rachel Morin. You guys remember this story? He was found guilty. First-degree premeditated murder, first-degree rape, third-degree sexual assault, and kidnapping. She's 37. She was the mother of 5. She was found dead near the Ma and Pa Trail in Harford County. That was in August of 2023. She went for a jog. She went for a hike. This guy was found 10 months later in Oklahoma, hiding out. Illegally entered from where? El Salvador. The exact same place that the senator from Maryland is going to go visit. One of his constituents was brutally murdered and raped. And he's crying about some dude from El Salvador. The amount of tone deafness that you have to live in the world where that makes sense. It's the same tone deafness that we heard the other day about Taylor Loren talking about how a man who's morally good, who shoots a father in the back. These people, I hate using the word demonic because I think it's completely overblown. I think it is massively overused. And yet, what else would you call it when somebody decides that they're going to side with the team that is behind rape and murder and illegality and then claim falsely that they care about rule of law? It's so hard to digest this garbage. Again, he's going to go check on the Maryland man's condition. How about the Maryland woman? How about the Maryland man that lost a wife there? The mother of his children. I can't fathom what that would look like. Trying to handle this stuff as a father, having known that your wife went for a walk. Would you ever be able to look at a park the same way? Or a trailhead? Would you ever want to be able to let your children out of your sight when a 37-year-old grown woman is taken from you that way? The amount of evil that you have to go and co-sign on is so shocking. It's impossible to get any, you can't get any peace out of that. That same senator, by the way, brings me to my second interesting thing. Where do these people learn this stuff? Where have they been programmed? One of the biggest things that Donald Trump campaigned on, in addition to the border thing, was the fact that we're seeing a political left that has captured the Department of Education, educating our children, putting thoughts into their minds, making you think that your own country is the bad guy. I got another video from that exact same senator. And I actually screamed like a Yahtzee when I was reading up on his Wikipedia because I don't know enough about this guy. He's not my senator. He's defending Harvard now. He's on the side of Harvard, who just lost $2.2 billion in federal funding, which most of us don't actually think they should have had in the first place. Here he is defending Harvard, which is going to stand up to bullies and free speech. It's the same loser ideology. Do you think that the working class people in Maryland, and there are some, Maryland's a really interesting state. It's basically captured by Baltimore, which is incredibly poor, but they have a big black base that votes for Democrats. I don't know why. It's got a rural base of people that are landowners, but have been working on the land. I know people from rural Maryland. They're yeah, we hate that our state is captured. You've got the outskirts of D.C., which is basically working government folks who are all kind of living, there's a lot of cases that I worked in the Maryland outskirts of D.C. A lot of scam, a lot of fraud, a lot of public corruption there, just anecdotally. And this is their senator who's representing them, who's talking about Harvard losing money, and he's proud of Harvard for doing what they did. I wonder why.
I want to applaud Harvard University and all the other colleges and universities that are standing up to the bullying from the Trump administration. Donald Trump and Elon Musk and others, they value the First Amendment for themselves, but for nobody else, right? When others express their First Amendment views, they want to punish them if they aren't the same views that they have. That's not the way the First Amendment works. The value of the First Amendment is it allows people's expression, whether people like it or not. And to punish colleges and universities because they are standing up for the First Amendment rights of their students is flat out illegal. It's a violation of the First Amendment. This is nothing more than an effort to try to decapitate our colleges and universities that don't go along with everything the Trump administration wants to do. And it's in a moment like this where it's important that Harvard and other colleges and universities stand up for our country, for our Constitution, and not allow themselves to submit to bullying. And
yeah, that bullying, that's the United States government funding a so-called private university to the tune of not 8, not 9, but 10 figures? A 10-figure movement of our dollars to support things that are antithetical to the way that the United States government actually does business in real life. This is all about anti-Semitic speech is what they're talking about. Why in the world are we supporting Harvard in the first place that way? That seems totally reasonable. You're going to be totally shocked to find this out, by the way. But Chris Van Hollen, he went to Harvard. Yeah, like all of these people did. I'm about to play you this great super clip of all these people who went to Harvard, but totally don't want to tell you that they went to Harvard, because that would be kind of embarrassing to kind of expose the fact that they actually have some skin in the game when it comes to what's going on here. He got a master's degree from Harvard in public policy. His mom was in the CIA. His dad was a State Department, like federal service officer, and or in the CIA. For those of you who don't know, the CIA often runs underneath the cover of the State Department. It's known as true state, meaning you actually work for the State Department, or people just claim to work for the State Department and they're actually working, in fact, for the CIA or one of the other intelligence apparatus. It's a classic sort of cover story overseas. So Chris Van Hollen grew up in a family that was 100% funded by the government, like so many of these people are, and decided that that's where he's going to land. These people who went to Harvard, they just really hate telling you. People who went to Harvard kind of remind me of people who are like Navy SEALs. You guys ever deal with a Navy SEAL, you'll know there's Navy SEAL. Not because they'll tell you, by the way. Navy SEALs rarely will tell you if you're a man. They're almost always too busy telling your girlfriend or your wife that they're Navy SEAL. It's a little bit of a joke, but that's actually true. If you guys have ever been around, go out to San Diego, go out to a bar on any Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night. You'll find out who the SEALs are, because they'll be telling all the women that. Yes, it is a thing. It's a joke that we love in the inter-service rivalry. That's the way that it plays off. People from Harvard are kind of the same thing. They have to do the humble brag saying, like, full disclosure. I also went to Harvard. To the point where even the left-wing Daily Show on Comedy Central is making fun of them. This is a great little super clip. And, when you've lost some of the left, have you really lost it? I think you've actually lost something pretty strong when the Daily Show is not supporting your Harvard BS.
But the best part about Harvard's resistance to Donald Trump is that it gives people the chance to go on TV and let you know where they went to school.
I myself am a first-generation college graduate. I graduated from Harvard.
I should disclose I went to Harvard, so I'm very familiar with the president and with how the community feels right now.
But as a Harvard alum, and as you know, I am as well.
I know many alums, including people I know very closely and faculty members like me.
I know you look really surprised because I'm wearing a tie you've never seen before. It has a little Latin word inside each one of those symbols there, the word veritas, meaning truth, of course. And this is the one night, it's a one night only appearance of this tie.
I know that is not something that you usually billboard in the world about yourself.
Oh, God, the only thing worse than people bragging about going to Harvard is people pretending to be embarrassed about going to Harvard. It's like, oh, my darkest secret, please don't make me tell anyone, please. No, I went to Harvard. Harvard. My favorite guy is Lawrence O'Donnell. He's really embarrassed he has to talk about this. I mean, it's definitely not something he will bring up all the time over the course of many years.
Let me just say, confessionally, I went to Harvard College. Most of the good things that have happened to me in some way trace back to Harvard. You and I, as Harvard Americans, I first heard him speak as a guest lecturer at Harvard. Okay, well, I got into Harvard too. In fact, it was the only college I applied to.
So I know we're trying to bring people back from the El Salvador mega prison, but do they have room for one more, by any chance? For more on Harvard's resistance.
Do they have room for one more? I hope so. And can we also include whoever the editor is over at CNN's webpage? Because this was maybe the worst thing that I saw. Ironic, let's call it that. And since we're in the kind of the comedy vein right now, check this out. I read you the story earlier about the Salvadorian fugitive. This was the guy found in Oklahoma, responsible for the murder of Rachel Morin, convicted. The craziest thing, and this is something you actually just have to see to believe, folks. You have to actually go to their webpage, or you can always join us on the program here. If you're watching on Spotify, you'll be able to see this on the visual. Click over to the visual and see what I'm showing you right now. There's a picture of it's a Shutterstock standard picture of the outside of the courtroom in the county where this was going on, the Hartford County courtroom. I threw up a couple of pictures of the senator there, and then also this convicted Victor Martinez Hernandez. And I kid you not, the entire third of the window, the top bar, was what you see at the bottom here. I chopped it out for you. It says Hulu, The Handmaid's Tale. This limited ad experience is presented by Hulu and The Handmaid's Tale. The Handmaid's Tale is sponsoring the story of the conviction of an illegal alien rapist murderer in Maryland on the same day when the senator from Maryland decided to fly to El Salvador to try to liberate a quote-unquote Maryland man who was another illegal alien accused of sex trafficking, accused of being involved in MS-13 operations, which are brutal. And that's what they decided to spend their time on. I don't know if The Handmaid's Tale / Hulu knew what they were sponsoring, if they're like, yeah, give us your top 5 stories. But the irony of the people who run around in The Handmaid's Tale worried about the United States government and Donald Trump coming out there and taking their freedoms, when you are talking about the story of someone whose freedom was literally taken from them because she was murdered and brutally raped. It boggles my mind. It makes me realize that God kind of has a sense of humor with us, makes us understand just how silly the world of man is. This is why you shouldn't trust people specifically. You should trust God outside of it, because men are going to let you down. Like the world, anybody who tells me, oh, I trust in this person. Why? What, like some ad person put that up there and now has to, deal with the fact that this is insane. What The Handmaid's Tale, but it actually does suit their brand. So there's that. All right. CNN also covered their biggest story, which is that tempers flare because a few Republicans decided to hold some town halls and some agitators, paid or otherwise, decided to show up and get really mad at them. So this was their other big story. So their stories are, I had to go digging, by the way, for the story of Rachel Moran. That was not up front. This was up front. There's a white guy with glasses on who looks exactly what you think. He's got a white beard. He's got enough time to be a professional protester. Shockingly, he's actually not fat. He's actually in decent shape looking. And he's fighting and resisting being removed from a town hall with Marjorie Taylor Greene by, looks like a Latino cop and a black cop. If we were going to be Democrats, we would find out that this man is actually representing the evil white patriarchy, but because he's cheering for the right side, it's all good. No problems there at all. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? I don't know. Sometimes you just see the stuff. And then this was the coverage. This is why this was the number one story they had. Frustrated voters are telling Republicans to push back against Trump. The frustrated voters that want, quote unquote, Maryland men returned to Maryland despite not being from Maryland. And despite pretty good reasons on that day of all days not to be talking about it. MTG was apparently mocked in critical questions and interrupted by protesters. Police officers had to use stun guns on several attendees, which means the party of the left, the people who were mad and wanted to keep yelling at their congressperson, couldn't do so in a respectful way. They had to get physical, and they ended up getting physical with cops. That seems to be the MO of the left in general. Not the party of law enforcement, not the party of law and order, like Chris Van Hollen says. Van Hollen. That's wild to me. By the way, they also have to begrudgingly mention deep in the article here that when somebody stood up and said something angry to her, that it got a small smattering of applause, which is to say that the majority of people that were there were not actually really excited about it. And MTG, to her credit, she says all of us together, no matter where we stand in the political spectrum, we're all in the American debt at $36 trillion. I have a really interesting Sunday sit down coming up with Andy Scheckman where we talk about debt and American debt, both at the household level and at the national level, and what it would look like. And like a man who's done $12 billion in selling precious metals, who doesn't try to sell you anything. He doesn't plug his company one time while we sat down and talked about it. His real concern is this overwhelming federal debt that Congress keeps signing on for. So MTG's not wrong. How come people are not outraged that people are spending all this crazy amounts of money, whether it be at Harvard or whether it be trying to litigate the case of this illegal alien who has no right to be here in the first place? Like, where the hell is he going to go? There's nowhere to go. That's it. Take a minute to breathe real quick. Say, if you guys care about the Second Amendment, if you care about your own civil liberties, you want to make sure that you are supporting your own. You want to carry a weapon system that is going to keep you safe. If you are a female, this is a fantastic idea. 37-year-old moms, whether you have 1 or 5 kids, you want to keep an eye out when you're out walking in the park. I'm working on getting my wife to once again start carrying again. You guys can go to shieldarms.com. They make one of the best options for the Glock pistol. This is the Glock 43 and the 43Xs and the 48. They have high capacity magazines that are going to be bigger, 50% bigger than what you're going to get out of the factory. And then this one I'm showing you right here, some footage I shot. If you have a hard time loading magazines, this is a product that I just spent my money on. I have it inbound. Shield Arms sent me a shipping notice the other day. It is freaking badass. It is a bunch of German guys that made this very, very cool hand loader. It's a little bit expensive. It's like $100. You can use my promo code Kyle to save yourself like either 5 or 10%. I don't know what they're doing right now. They kind of mix it up depending on the day. But if you want like a really awesome hand loader, if you've tried like the Eula loaders, or the Magpul loaders, or the cram down loaders that suck, that thing is awesome. And if you don't have strong hand strength, especially if you're getting older rather, and you have like arthritis or anything in fingers, it is pretty badass. You're also seeing on the screen right here, Wes and my FFL Mike talking about the soft goods. So if you're looking for a chest rig or something, you're not a body armor kind of guy, but you want to train and something, you want something to grab, bump in the night, this is a cool way to do it. Shield Arms makes all their stuff in-house, which is really cool too. They do their own sewing shop. I know the guys who are designing them, they're former Green Berets. So check out shieldarms.com. Use promo code KYLE. Save yourself a couple bucks while you're doing so. We'll get back into some of this stuff. This is just a random story I saw, but it's a reason why I'm not giving money to the Catholic Church at this point, and they're reaffirming every single time. I'm more than happy to give money to people who need it. We did so last night, listening to a Twitter space. There's a Master Sergeant in the Army who's going through like some pretty expensive cancer treatments and so on. And so like I'll do my private donations. I will do private charity, but I'm not supporting things that include the Catholic Church, specifically like brand name Catholic. And this is another story. This is from my friends over at Catholic Vote, who do a really good job of keeping track of this. This is the Catholic Conference of Illinois basically dropped their opposition to a homeschool bill because the state amended it to basically allow the Catholic bishops to keep the money or keep the regulation out of Catholic schools, parochial schools, and nonprofit private schools. So they were like, okay, we're not worried anymore. They don't mind about the regulation of homeschools, even though a lot of Catholics, just like a lot of other Christians across the country, doesn't matter what brand name you fall under, what denomination, you don't want the government educating your children because the government turns out some of these knuckleheads, like you see the senator from Maryland. You don't want to send your kids off without a strong foundation. So you want to, tutor them in the doctrines and indoctrinate them the way that you believe and not what the state believes. When the Illinois bishops dropped their opposition to it, apparently, this is the fifth paragraph in, it says, the bill was just amended and advanced on April 9th. The CCI, that's the Catholic Conference of Illinois, they have a revised version of the bill, which now excludes private and diocesan schools, so they're no longer impacted. It's still going to have this massive overregulation on homeschool, which should be your right as a parent to do. Now, that's the problem. We live in an imperfect society, but I'll tell you this, the state is not going to be the arbiter of how we educate our kids and ought not to be. So people are going to continue to vote with their feet to leave places like Illinois, which has terrible rights when it comes to any civil liberties, whether it be guns or free speech or otherwise. They're more than happy to protect one side and not the other. So if you guys are in Illinois, my condolences to you. I don't want you to be there. It's dangerous, and it's still dangerous at the federal level as well. I'm going to do a little moment. Oh, here we go. I found one more. I'll just throw this on the screen here too. This is a recent press release from DHS saying that this is from March 21st of 2025. Yet another example of a guy who was involved in a drunk driving crash of a 21-year-old woman. The guy's also an illegal alien. He was in Honduras. They went and pulled him out. She was killed in Nebraska. Blood alcohol was 3 times the legal limit. Why? Because when you bring people here from other countries, one, if they don't have to work, they're going to get hammered. 2, if they're used to living in a place where they never had to do anything, where there are no real laws, when there's no likely enforcement, and driving drunk because there's nobody on the roads is irrelevant, and they didn't kill themselves by that time, then maybe they just keep doing it here. They don't care. This woman was killed in 2016, by the way. Her family had to wait almost 10 years, the UFAP, to get this guy back, which means this probably started a very long time ago. But they're extraditing him back to face American justice, which is not perfect, and it's certainly sad. But yeah, for those of you who picked up on the thing, I'm seeing it in the chat here. Let me throw this on the screen for the chat. Our chat said he flew private. Yeah, isn't that something? He got extradited to the United States in a private jet that the United States government owns. Our priorities are pretty backwards, aren't they? Pretty wild. I also suggested to Miranda Devine yesterday, because she did a previous story on it. The Daily Wire doesn't seem like they're covering it at the moment. The guy that I worked with a little while ago he's no longer with Daily Wire. But one of the interesting stories about the changeover from the FBI, for all my problems with the way that Kash Patel is doing things, which are significant, and we're going to get into him in just a second, for just a little bit, I just want to touch on him. Mostly because it seems like there's a sea change there. One of the things I don't have a problem with is the fact that he's actually now using the private jet by not doing what Chris Wray did. If you guys listen to this program long enough, if you follow people like Miranda Devine over at The Post, if you read the stories that came out in Daily Wire, one of the reasons why we had an issue with Chris Wray's use of the private jet is that he would summon it from Manassas, where the jet lives, 40 miles over to Reagan, DCA, at a cost of somewhere between $2,500 and $10,000 per flight. And he did this hundreds of times, adding up to almost $2 million in total use. That stuff is terrible. That should be one of those things that's prosecutable by the new FBI. by the new Pam Bondi regime. They should be able to go back, pull the flight logs, show that Kash Patel has not needed to do that flight, which is very expensive to the American taxpayer, that it was being done at the discretion of Chris Wray, and that is a wasteful use of American taxpayer dollars to a 7-figure amount. If somebody squanders American taxpayer dollars in the millions because of their own personal convenience or decision, should that person not be held responsible? You'd think they should. I'd like to see that happen, and I'm hoping that they'll cover it again. But as Dan Bongino famously said, and as one of our listeners here pointed out to me in an email, it's the do that matters. We're not seeing the do. When I went looking to validate this, because I didn't listen to every show that Dan Bongino did, I'm not even close. I was on his Fox show on TV probably 4 or 5 times. I was on his radio show probably close to 12 times. I don't know. I was on his podcast as an interview at least 2 times. 2 shows that were one interview for me and another 1 or 2 after that. I spent a fair amount of time on the program. I never actually heard him say the words, the do matter. So I went searching for it. I went looking into the archives. Hey, where do we find that? Dan Bongino, the do matters. And the first thing I found, humorously enough, was this post. It comes from Facebook with a video of Dan Bongino talking about Rumble, talking about free speech, talking about defending civil liberties, the fact that they were doing that, which is questionable because Rumble definitely squashes what we're doing over here. But at the end of that segment, he was pumping the fact that I was going to be on Unfiltered, his Fox show, at the end of it with his other guest, Sean Hannity. And all I have to say about all this is, isn't that amazing how far we've come in 2 years? Because 2 years ago, Dan was on Fox. He was running one of the bigger radio shows and one of the biggest podcasts. He was breaking out and launching Rumble into the atmosphere and allowing people to go and buy it, and became a multimillionaire overnight. And he was being awfully friendly to me. But what's funny is my tune has not changed. I haven't changed the way that I think about things. I haven't changed the way that we're talking about it. And I haven't changed what I think about the FBI, which is that if they knock on the door, whether the Kash Patel is the director or Chris Wray is the director, it's irrelevant. They've changed 2 guys at the top and almost none of the other people. They've promoted guys like Stanley Meador, who's out there and was responsible for the Richmond field office when they put out the Catholic document. We are not seeing the do happen. So why don't you continue to follow the advice of Dan Bongino? This is right after I was on his podcast, giving a little bit of an update in his episode 1859. Here he is talking about don't answer the door and don't speak to the FBI. That still holds true. That is the same advice that I have today. And I'm going to wrap up with showing you they're losing some support. They being Dan, them being Kash, because they're not doing the thing that we said. They're losing the support of guys like Steve Bannon and Rudy Giuliani. That is not a good scenario for them. I don't know how they continue to not do the thing that they were asked to do. It's actually not that hard. We actually wrote up a blueprint for day 1 operations so that you could go back and claw back the FBI like it was the hostile takeover / counterinsurgency that it was always meant to be. And I'm not seeing the do right now, folks. Here's Dan telling you not to answer the door and not to talk to the FBI. He's still right.
Folks, they will look for any reason to knock on your door, the FBI. Did you hear what he said? Did you guys catch it, Kyle? When he said a lot of people self-incriminated? I should have cut that little part out and thrown it in afterwards. That is so important. They will look for any reason to knock on your door. Hey, we're the FBI. We just want to talk. What's your answer? Not interested. You have no constitutional obligation whatsoever to tell them a damn thing but your name.
Always be closing the door. A, B, C, D. We said it here. Rose will put it out in the chat. I'm sure of it. You guys can find where she used to, where she's covered it. Our archivist will put it out there. You're also seeing now that the Gateway Pundit did an entire story basically off a tweet that I pushed, which is saying that promoting the videos of a guy who's running the Richmond field office who was responsible for saying that basically people who like traditional Latin Mass Catholics, probably the same people that are homeschooling, if you're being honest, those people were targeted as potentially white supremacists. And now you got the deputy director of Dan Bongino pushing that forward. Dan, who was absolutely outraged that they would go after Catholics in the first place. How does this happen? It don't make no sense. But that's why you're losing guys like Steve Bannon. Here's Bannon talking about it. You've heard Tom Fenton talk about it. You're now seeing Jim Hoft over at the Gateway Pundit pushing my thing. These are not people I talk to, by the way. I've never talked to Tom Fenton other than a couple of Twitter spaces back in the day. I've never had a conversation with Steve Bannon. I have no idea where we align on, where we don't, but it sounds like he's lost it. I've never spoken with Rudy Giuliani. All of these guys are looking around going, Trump, what the hell are these people doing? What are your guys up to right now that they are pushing the absolute wrong dudes? And they pushed out Spencer Evans, who's in charge of the Vegas field office. Yesterday, Dan Bongino was hanging out. You guys know this. He was hanging out in Phoenix telling people about his bench press, saying if you can bench press 315, you can bench press 316. So you got to do things incrementally. Meanwhile, all of the agents that were supposed to be out there deporting these assholes that have been killing people, that are supposed to be going after the criminal illegal aliens, they were told to stand down and show up in the office in suits by their executive management. Dan Bongino was told by one of our guys specifically that people in Phoenix are being told to stand down from ICE raids so they can listen to you speak, and Dan allowed that to happen. He didn't tell him, hey, continue operations as normal. The deputy director popping in is just me saying hi to the management. No big deal. Nope. He wanted the audience, it sounds like. So he got it. And he got to talk about a bench press. That's how you lose people like Steve Bannon. That's how you lose guys like Giuliani. That's how you lose Tom Fenton, who are saying now, back to the old ways. You're hearing the same thing that Dan Bongino used to say. The FBI needs to be disbanded. You haven't heard me say that in a while. Apparently, you're a crazy person if you say that. And yet, it should have always been on the table. And if those guys walked into that job and didn't realize that was a potential possibility, that they may have to shutter the thing and start laying people off left and right or putting them into positions where they cannot violate the Constitution, they screwed us. That's the real answer. If they didn't go in knowing that one of those possibilities equal, this is a total teardown, then they screwed us.
Situation with Cash and with Pam Bondi, yes, it's a huge concern. We actually have another video that Elizabeth over at Telegram has pulled that I want to put up of Fenton again talking about the FBI. Tom Fenton's idea of the FBI and mine are exactly aligned. I'm not sure you can reform the FBI. I don't know you should reform the FBI. Certainly, I would not be putting up stuff on Instagram every couple of days about, hey, we're leading a new FBI and showing guys jumping out of planes and all that. I'm just not buying that.
Nobody needs you to do the promo videos. The do matters. Here's a Revolver News. That's Darren Beattie, buys. So Darren Beattie, who's part of the Julie Kelly conglomerate, that's 100% pro Dan Bongino all the time. Beattie was in Police State with Dinesh D'Souza. Dan helped produce that movie. I was part of that movie. I didn't ever meet Darren there, but I've spoken to him on the phone a few times. They're publishing a story over at Revolver. Bannon believes the only way to truly save America is to literally bulldoze FBI headquarters. Okay? This is a sea change in this. Here's Bannon again.
I don't need to see any more working with the FBI assault team. I don't care. People, this audience does not care. The top 10 FBI people, hey, if they're going to be arrested, go for it. That's fine. But that's not the priorities. The priority, this is a priority. HB1 visas are a priority. Protecting American citizens like we protect the sovereignty of our country and the territorial integrity.
Does the do matter or does it not matter? That seems pretty important. I'm going to give you one more with Tom Fenton on the screen here, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of Rudy Giuliani, and then we'll shut this thing down for the day. But again, when you guys send me emails, I read them, by the way. It's info@KyleSeraphin.com. If you want to send us an email, if you want to send something, your thoughts, I get a mixture of really, really nice comments, super crazy people, and some of you giving me insight that I would not otherwise have. So continue to do so. I appreciate it. I'll read the crazy and I'll delete it. I will look at the nice comments and I don't let it go to my head because it doesn't mean anything. It's like very nice that you would take the time to do it. So we appreciate that, but it doesn't mean anything on the broader scale that we've changed anything. And then I get some of these insights like the do matters, which was not on my radar until it was. So here's Tom Fenton and this is the entire show, Steve Bannon's War Room, that they do 4 hours a day that is dedicated to basically pumping up Donald Trump. And they have turned the corner on the FBI. That is very interesting to me, and it should be interesting to you as well.
Tom Fenton, this is incredibly important. It's not just about the Epstein files or other things. You got to pull the camera back, and I want you to repeat it. The FBI and the DOJ came that close, within a micromillimeter of jailing President Trump, and not just me and Navarro. I'm talking about others, but jailing President Trump for 20 or 30 years for nothing, totally made up. This thing stinks to high heaven, and I 100%. And it's kind of sad you had to come back a week after you were on here the first time. We need immediately a special counsel designated by the president to report to the president. I just want the audience to know we're not picking on Cash and Pam. We love Cash and Pam, but it's obvious running those institutions is a full-time job. This is why they took ATF away from Cash. It wasn't that he was doing a bad job. His plate is full, just running it.
Let's stop pretending that the FBI is controllable in terms of budget and size. Let's stop pretending DOJ is controllable in terms of budget and size. So there needs to be a DOJ approach to both agencies. And there needs to be an approach treating them like Department of Education and DOJ. I'd be happy having Linda McMahon go over there because she's been doing this over at the Education Department. They already have people who've kind of gone through this process internally in terms of managing the decimation of these out-of-control agencies in a way that protects the Republic. And in terms of the lawfare, there's got to be accountability for it.
There has to be something that actually moves forward. You got to do something there, folks. So I'm imploring that they start the do immediately. And that doesn't mean that you promote a J6 warlord. That is not an option. That is a terrible decision on every level. I'm going to give you Giuliani. Before we do that, let's just say thanks for all of you that are listening, that are watching. We appreciate you guys. You can follow us at rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. For many of you that are over there, I just showed you the chat. There's folks that are constantly there. First thing in the morning, we really appreciate you doing that. Make sure you like the video if you watch it at any time on Rumble. Same story for those over on YouTube. It's at Kyle Seraphin on YouTube and at Kyle Seraphin on X. Reshare it. But also make sure you like it and subscribe there. And then lastly, if you guys want to get the articles that we do, if you want to go look for that, I stream it over on Locals just for you guys in case you have any issues. But additionally, it's a place where we can store stuff and you get access to our Sunday sit downs on Saturday, a little bit early, some interactions there. Lastly, and finally, Spotify is KyleSeraphinShow.com. It's a real easy way to get there. Let me show you Rudy Giuliani, because that seems to me kind of telling as well. And I want to just push this on. Rudy's talking about how badly they treated people, right? He's talking about what they did and why it should have been a situation handled very early on. And he's not seeing it either. So we're all getting on the same page here. These are people that I've never spoken to that are seeing the same problems from the same outside. This is Giuliani on Eric Boylan's show.
By the way, the reason why I brought this up in the break, we were talking about the way they've treated Bannon and Peter Navarro as well. So you talk to us a little bit.
Well, I get a lot of sympathy and a lot of support. And there's no question I was beaten up pretty bad. But my friends, Steve and Peter Navarro, much worse in being put in jail. I mean, 4 months in jail. How about putting leg irons on Peter Navarro? Yeah, I must have arrested 5,000 people. I probably used leg irons once or twice. I can't even recall it. It probably have to have been a 5 times murderer. It's ridiculous. That was just done because the FBI is crooked. And I'm very upset now because Kash Patel and Pam Bondi have taken one of the people that was running the unit going after Catholics in the Justice Department and also going after J6 people and put them in charge of the Washington office of the FBI. And I tried to reach them today. They didn't call me back. I want to know why. They say there's an explanation for it. It better be damn good.
So tell us, do you think Kash and Pam are doing the job that we...
I do. I up until now, I was over the top enthusiastic, particularly about the Justice Department. Wow. Justice Department did a great job. So I'm going to assume there's a reason for this that I don't know. But I can't give it, and I'm getting hundreds of calls about it. How do these, particularly from the J6 group, because as you imagine, they're very tight. Mm-hmm. And this guy, some of them tell me this guy was like... mean and vicious and treated them horrible. Now he's going to run the Washington office of the FBI.
There's no question about that being true, by the way. So any argument that you need to promote the worst Nazi in order to go and find the Nazis is insane. Any argument that the guy who was the architect behind the J6 prosecutions needs to be promoted so you can find out who went after the prosecutions is absurd. The files are all in the computers. You can find out what he said, what he wrote. You can go get the emails. You can find his text messages. They're all archived. They're all required to be archived. It is not a sensitive issue. This is simple investigative work internally. The problem is the group that was going after all of those folks that dissented, that disagreed, has been weaponized. And one of the things on the slide deck that we sent out there, and we shared it with Kash so that he knew what was going on, the Insider Threat Office was used to go after guys like me, guys like Steve Friend, guys like Marcus Allen and Garrett O'Boyle. Would have gone after George Hill, except he was already gone. They went after others too. They went out and found the people that were dissenters and they tried to get rid of them. So you got to go find the people that were dissenters that said, hey, I had a problem. And by the way, I got squished. I lost my job. I lost my promotions. I found myself on some sort of administrative duty. I'm on unpaid suspension forever. These are the people that know that were willing to stand up when it was not safe. You don't go find some guy who's decided that now it's safe so I can go and do whatever I want and I'm going to go ahead and snuggle up with the new management. The do matters, allegedly. It needs to happen. I might reach out to Giuliani. We've got some contacts in common. Maybe he'll do a sit down with me. We can talk about this. I don't see it working. They did not come at this thing with the kind of violence of action that needed to be done. Speed, surprise, violence of action. That's how you take a room. That is how you take back a hostile government agency that has been working against Americans. You're seeing some of it from the Trump administration. They are actually doing some of that on the border end. There's more of it that needs to be done. But hopefully when you look, I see a direct line of failure to do the work and people that are promoting the wrong things. And the people that are promoting the wrong things are actually doing a pretty good job of holding that political narrative out in the media on a strong, strong way. We got to expose them where they're at. We'll just say the things that are accurate. Guy who defends Harvard. He's out there because he went to Harvard. Guy who's defending illegal aliens decided to skip out on the family when a convicted murderer came from the same place that he's traveling to go find a guy who doesn't even belong in this country in the first place. That's crazy. We can't keep doing crazy in this country. Otherwise, we're just going to see the Trump administration be a speed bump to that agenda. All right, that's what I got for today. I hope you guys have a fantastic Wednesday. It feels like it's already been a long week. That's just the way it goes. God bless all of you. We'll look forward to seeing you in the morning. Make sure you share the program, and we'll see you again then.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.